tomorrow Tanis Esther, and the Thursday Purim. All right, we'll go through the schedule later on, but we'll pick up with this. Meretz Hashem later in the week. All right, so we'll say good morning. Let's begin. A great daf ahead of us. It's always a great daf. Yet to meet the daf we didn't like. Good. So we'll say let's begin. Today's daf is Kuf Yud Beis 112. We are picking up Kuf Yud Aleph from Beis 111b. And actually, I started this story, but we're going to have to go back and start it again. Rav Huna Rav Chia bar Rav Ashi. It is 2, 4, 6, 8 lines up from the bottom. So Rav Huna and Rav Chia bar Rav Ashi. Well, see, each of them were sitting on a side of the bridge that went across Surah. So apparently there's a river in Surah. They went ahead and were each sitting on one side of the bridge. What happens? We'll say is interesting. Two different situations unfolding on both sides of the bridge. Lamar Aisule Dagim Shalu Bikara Va'acha B'Kusach. On one side of the bridge, they brought one of these great rabbis, fish that was placed, a fried fish that was cooked, hot fish, placed on a plate that was used for meat, and he then subsequently went ahead and ate this fish with kusach, with this milchig's dip. To the other person, they went ahead and they brought him te'inim and anavim, figs and grapes, in the middle of the su'udah, va'achal, and he ate them, v'lo barich, and he did not go ahead and make a bracha. He did not make a bracha. Then I will say, so again, remember, the logic over there being is, when you make hamot, well, okay, he didn't make an extra bracha on them. So the Gemara said, well, so listen to this. So they get into a little bit of a fight, a disagreement across the bridge. Mamish, watch this. Mar amrle lechavre. So one of them called out to his friend, Mar amrle lechavre, Yasma. Right? Or we'll say now, literally again, if you look at Rashi, Yasma means an orphan. In this context, it means someone orphaned of knowledge. Right? Yasma, how can you do something, right? How can you do something ultimately, again, what you're doing? Yasma, Avid Rab Chahachi, would your Rebbe behave like this? Would your Rebbe behave like this? Umar Amalei Lechavre, Yasma, Avid Rab Chahachi. And the other one called back the other one, right? You Yasam of Daus, you orphan of knowledge, would your Rebbe go do like this? So what was the issue? Amalei Lechavre. So Mar Amalei, so the Gemara says, Mar Amalei Lechavre, Ana Kishmol Sirole, Umar Amalei Lechavre, Ana Krebchia Sirole. So we'll say, so they both responded to one another. One said to the first one, I hold like Shmuel. The other one said to the other, I hold like Rebchia. So we'll say, remember again, the Shmuel was what we saw yesterday. Shmuel explicitly says, Dagim Sha'alu Bekara, that if you put hot fish in a fleshik plate, then Allah Chamais you can eat with kusach. So one said back, I hold like Shmuel. This is what my Rebbe says. And the other said, I hold like Rebchia. So what did Rebchia say? Rebchia, Pas poteres homine Michael, that ultimately, again, when you go ahead and you wash, so bread exempts all types of food within a meal. The yain poteres homine mashkin, and ultimately, again, wine exempts all type of drinks. So, both it's actually an interesting discussion regarding Hilchos Su'uda, that when we say bread goes ahead and exempts everything, doesn't really exempt everything. So clearly you see over here that one of these rabbis, whoever was eating, whichever one, felt that eating te'inim and anavim, fruit, in the middle of the Su'udah, goes ahead and is exempted by Passover. So you should just know, contemporarily this happens to be a very interesting machlokas. So today it's a little bit different, because people normally, it's not uncommon for a person to eat a fruit cup, right? You know, as an appetizer, some fruit in the course of a meal. Clearly, in terms of the Gemara, it was not the norm. But I will say, but this is important, because sometimes if a person eats things in the middle of a meal, which are not normally part of a meal, you decide you want dessert, right? In the middle of the meal, I will say, so your hamotzi does not cover that. Right, that hamotzi covers things that are part of the normative meal, not things that are not come as part of the suda. Again, in general, there's a machlokes what happens by dessert, but again, not our topic for today. In any event, halacha lemaisa, one of these rabbanim felt that you could eat tenim and anavim. Why? Because he made hamotzi. Good. Amr chizki mishum abai hilchasa. The halacha is dagim sha'alu b'kara mutulu achlan b'kusach. So we'll say, so first of all, the halacha is that if you went ahead and you ate fish, hot fish, placed on a fleshik plate, you could eat that fish with kusach. I will say the logic being that is a nat, what we call a nat barnat dehetera, a secondary taste infusion. Ultimately, again, as Motor Rabbi say, now I just want to be clear on something. L'chatchila, one should certainly not do this, right? L'chatchila, again, we try to avoid this type of commingling of milchiks and fleishiks whenever possible, but ex post facto, if you did it, technically speaking, it is permitted. Sinon shechat chobasakin, but also another very important halacha. If you cut a knife, if you cut an onion with a knife, shechatach ba basar, if you cut an onion with a fleishik knife, asr la'achla b'kuzach. You are prohibited to eat that onion, ultimately again with kuzach, which will say is another way of saying that when you cut an onion with a fleishik knife, that onion is bona fide fleishiks. We'll say an incredible halacha. So therefore, again, it cannot be eaten with anything milchiks afterwards. So the Gemara says, "V'hani militz known," but understand this is a unique halacha by an onion. Why? Top of kufyu base. The agav churfei bala. Now, the truth is there are two things that are happening over here. Literally, again, as a result of its sharpness, an onion is in halacha what's called a davar charif, a sharp food item. So because of that, halacha l'maaseh has different properties. So therefore, again, if you were to go ahead and cut an onion with a fleishik knife, that onion would essentially become fleishiks, and therefore halacha l'maaseh you would not be permitted to go ahead and eat it with a milchik item. Aval kisha sabosai. So the truth is, there's two things happening over here. There's the fact that the onion is a davar charif, and also again what we call duchka de sakina, the pressing down of the knife, which also we'll discuss as in greater depth, also has the ability in certain circumstances to convey flavor. Aval kishos, I will say, for example, again, gourds, garu lebe paske va'achil. If you were to cut a gourd with a fleishik knife, I will say, what's talacha? This is very important. If you were to cut a gourd with a fleishik knife, what would you do? You would simply clean off the surface area which came in contact with the fleishik knife, and you're good to go. So we'll say, so if you cut up a gourd for a salad, and you want to use it in a milchik salad, are you permitted to do so? The answer is yes, but you have to clean off. You essentially have to wash off the gourd. You have to clean off the surface area where it came in contact with the knife. Kilchi the lifta, simply again, stalks. Leek stalks, right? Lefes are leeks. So if you went ahead and you cut the stalks of leeks with a fleishik knife, ultimately, again, it is permitted. It is permitted. Rashi says, "Lifta lefes eno charef elam masok ve'intan shuman nikarbo." So we'll say ultimately again, the tam of the shuman, the tam of anything on the knife, does not show up in the leek stalks. This silka. What about beets? Asiri. Ultimately, again, they would be aser. V'patach luhu. So we'll say, so apparently beets have different kinds of quality as well. More, Rashi says, the silky asiri, the fisha no sin taban. So apparently, again, so beets apparently have more of a din like onions. And if you go ahead and you cut it with a fleishik knife, halacha l'maaseh, again, you'd have to be careful because of no same time. V'pasach b'hu delifta shapir damir. This is actually very interesting. If you alternate between cutting leeks and beets, apparently, again, in that circumstance, so the beets will be permitted as well. Look at Rashi. V'pasach b'hu delifta arvan be'is chituchan shechatach. You alternate back and forth between cutting leeks and beets. So halefes mevatel tamasham nunis minasakin. So apparently, in that circumstance, the leeks go ahead and neutralize the ability for the knife to convey taste. Minasakin. Therefore, I will say halacha l'maaseh, in that case, the beets would go ahead and the beets would not be received tam as well. Okay, so let's say, so again, just to point out over here, the halacha l'maaseh takeaway from this is, don't use fleishik knives for things that you want to be able to use for non-fleishik items. Now with onions, it's clearly most acute, because this is very important, halacha that often goes unnoticed, because again, sometimes people could think, and it's easy to think this way, which is an onion is cold, right? The knife is clean. What problem is going to be? Also, I'll tell you something even more dramatic. The halacha is, even if you have a fleishik knife that has not been used in the last 24 hours, you have a fleishik knife that hasn't been used in the last week, if you cut an onion with that knife becomes, the onion becomes fleishiks. But I would say not only does the knife has the ability to convey the meat status to the onion, but an onion even has the ability to awaken what we call inan ben yomo, an eno ben yomo. Normally, again, we're going to get into this, that absorptions are really only active for 24 hours. After 24 hours, we assume absorptions become dormant and don't really convey anything. And a major exception to that rule is a davar charif, spicy or sharp items. Onion is the paradigmatic example of that, have the ability to awaken dormant. Who never knew that the koach of an onion? Listen, I just want to point out to you something. If an onion has such koach, can you imagine the koach that we have? Let's say, right, an onion could go ahead and take absorptions that were absorbed a week ago and bring it back to life. We're both saying all of us have sparks of kedusha within ourselves that have become dormant long ago. If an onion could awaken something in a night, then imagine what we can awaken in ourselves. It's incredible the mussar that Chazal give us. So we'll say, so again, this is exceptionally important. Therefore, again, so conventional wisdom is make sure to have pariv knives in your home. So if you want to go ahead and you want to prepare an onion, that ultimately, again, you want to be able to use for whatever. Again, obviously, if you're making something fleishiks, and you're using, so fine, you can use a fleshik knife, but sometimes people cut up things that they want to be able to use in a more versatile way. You have to be careful what you cut up the onion with. Good. Weiter. I will say an interesting case. Is there a problem with placing your container of salt next to your container? I will say kamcha is kusach. Right? You have a kusach container, which again is your milchik dip. Is there a problem with putting your container of salt next to your kusach dip? Rashi says over here, kamcha kusach, mi chayshinan shemeyipol min hakusach b'melach, v'hu lo yada, v'yim lechin mimenu k'diras basas. So we'll say, if these two receptacles are next to each other, assuming they're both open, so what could happen? You could see a situation where maybe you're going to end up scooping out some kusach and inadvertently dropping some into the salt. Now, remember again, the issue is what color is the kusach? The kusach is white. So because of that, do I have to be concerned that kusach gets into salt? Amar le aser. So he said to Mitzvah, really you should not keep your salt receptacle, right, your salt container next to your kusach container out of concern that halacha l'maaseh it's going to get mixed in. The chalamai. I will say, what about my vinegar container? Is there an issue with keeping my vinegar container next to my salt container? What's the problem? Look at Rashi. The chalamai. Derech loses chometz l'soch hatavshil. Mi chayshinan shemeyipol min hakusach b'chometz. So I'm sorry, this is talking about keeping my vinegar next to my kusach. Should I be concerned? Remember again, because vinegar is an ingredient used in all types of dishes, milchiks and fleishiks. Should I be concerned that maybe if my kusach container is next to my vinegar container, some kusach is going to fall into the vinegar, rendering the vinegar milchiks, potentially milchiks, and I'm going to end up using it in a fleishik dish. So Amarle Shari says, no, you could keep the vinegar next to the kusach. He says, I don't understand. So the Gemara says, Umayshna, I don't understand. Why is it that you don't want me to keep salt next to kusach, but you're okay with me keeping vinegar next to kusach? So you both say salt and vinegar share the same quality in that what? They're an additive for all different types of dishes. You don't want me keeping my salt next to my kusach because kusach may fall in, yet you're not concerned with me keeping my vinegar next to my kusach. What's the pshat? So Bo says, it's actually very cute. So this is, remember again, this is Rav Dini asking Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman says, L'chiteichal ala kur de milcha. Measure out for me a kur of salt and I'll tell you the answer. So Bo says, apparently this is an expression that Rav Nachman used to say often. It was like a joke. Right? Measure me out some salt, give me something, and I'll tell you the answer. So he was joking. Anyway, I guess it was funny then. So the Gemara says, my time. So I'll say, so what's the reason? So, hai ise isura be'enei, v'hai lessa isura be'enei. We'll say, here's the chilik. The chilik is ultimately, again, look at Rashi for just a moment. Rashi says, hai kusach hanofel b'melach nira. So we'll say, if the kusach falls into the salt, it's recognizable. Umipnei shu'av v'lo batil. Aval kusach hanofel b'chometz lessa be'enei v'tayim enami lo yov v'tayim enami lo. So we'll say, here's the issue. We're concerned with the salt because if kusach falls into the salt, it's not bottle, and the taste is discernible. That's where there's a concern. If kusach happens to fall into the vinegar, more often than not, it's bottle in the vinegar, and it's not no same time, and therefore we're not so concerned. Okay, weiter. Hu bar gozla did not fall lekada de kamcha. We'll say there was once a pigeon, a young pigeon. This is talking about a shechter pigeon that fell into a barrel of kusach. And what happened? Sharye Rav Chinina Berei Dirava mi Pashrunya. And they permitted the pigeon. So the Gemara says, Amar Rava, Man Chochin LeMishrei Ki Hai Gavna. Who is wise enough to be able to go ahead and permit it? Right? Who would be wise enough to do this? Ilav Rav Chinina Berei Dirava mi Pashrunya. If it were not for Rav Chinina Berei Dirava, why? Kasavar Kiyam Rishwal. Because remember again, what's the issue over here? When the slaughtered pigeon falls into the kusach. See, we'll say, kusach is salted. Now watch this. See, we'll say, when Shmuel says there's something salted, it's like it's roasted. So we'll say, when do we say maliach kiroseach? When do we say that if something is salted? Right? Ultimately, it's like it's roasting is occurring. That's only if it's so salty that you cannot eat it as a result of its saltiness. Aval hai kuscha harinecha machmas mochol. But the kusach, as much as there is salt in there, it is still edible. So because it's edible, ultimately, again, we don't view as if there is a roseach process taking place over here. Therefore, you take the pigeon out, wash it off, and ultimately, again, the kusach and the pigeon are both permitted. So the Gemara says, "V'hani milichai," and this is true if the pigeon is raw. Aval tzli, but if apparently, again, if it was roasted, then what happens? By kliba. So we'll say if it's roasted and the pigeon falls into the kusach, then in fact the pigeon does absorb some of the kusach flavor, and you would need to remove a klipa, a layer of the pigeon. V'isle pile. But if the pigeon has cracks in its flesh, then what kuli aser? Then we assume absorption does occur, and the entire pigeon will be aser. V'metabel b'tabel. And similarly, again, if the pigeon is very seasoned, then what? Kuli aser. So once again, remember we operate with an approach. We've seen this right before. And Allah, when something is heavily seasoned, it becomes softer and absorbs more easily. So if the pigeon was already heavily seasoned and fall into the kusach, then ultimately again it will be aser. Good. So the Mar goes weiter. Amar Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel. Both say, let's go. Kikar shechata chalab baser. This is actually very interesting. Let's say if you take a piece of bread, kikar literally means a loaf. You take bread and you cut a piece of meat on top of that bread. What's the halacha? Aser la'achla. You are not permitted to go ahead and eat that bread. Rabbi say, why not? If you take a look at Rashi, first, why line in Rashi? Shechata chalab basar, kishuchotich minat sli. So we'll say, what I did is over here, I roasted a piece of meat. I'm now taking it off the fire. I'm putting it on top of a piece of bread. I'm cutting that piece of meat on top of the bread. The bread, now the Gemara says, Rav Nachman says the name of Shmuel, the bread is going to be aser. Why Rashi says? Because when you go ahead and you cut that piece of meat on top of that piece of bread, what's coming out of the meat? Blood. The blood gets absorbed in the piece of bread, and therefore, again, you are not permitted to eat the bread. Vahani mili, when is that true? Da'asmik. So we'll say, so number one, that is only true if you see the loaf of bread turn red. If you see it turn red, furthermore, vahani mili da'avre. And it's only literally if the bread becomes soaked through and through with the red liquid. So we'll say, so again, this is assuming that ultimately, again, it becomes soaked through and through with the red liquid. And I will say this is only true if the liquid which comes out of the meat is thick. Aval klishta less lanba. So we'll say if it's thick, it's blood. If it's liquidy, then what? Then it's more gravy. Less lanba. Shmuel, so the Gemara says, Shmuel, shadile the kalbe. So we'll say Shmuel used to take this loaf of bread, right, and he would go ahead and he would throw it to his dogs. He'd give it to his dogs. Rav Huna, Yareve l'shamei. Rav Huna used to give it to his servants. The Gemara says, what does that mean? Manavshach. Shari l'kuliyama. Shari. So we'll say the assumption of here is that Rav Huna's servants were Jewish. So if it's permitted for the servants, it's permitted for everyone else. Iyasa l'kuliyama. Iyasa l'kuliyama. Aser. So we'll say, and again, if it's aser, then even for the attendants, it's aser. So what's going on over here? Shani Rav Huna da'anina daite. So this is actually very interesting. Rav Huna actually held that halacha l'maisa, that the bread was permitted. We'll see why in just a moment. The bread was permitted. So why didn't he eat it himself? Why did he give it to his attendants? He was like an istinis. Anina daite. If you look at Rashi, haidilo achile mishum di istinis hava v'la mishum yisrael. We'll say he was just sensitive to certain things. and the red bread just didn't do it for him. So it's a spot. Apparently, the attendants had no problem eating this loaf of bread. It was totally kosher. He just didn't have the what's the word? His constitution did not allow for the consumption of such items. Rav Achil, Rav used to eat it. Vikari le chamar basar, and he would say, "This is the wine of the meat." So both say, so Rav actually paskin that Allah Chalamayim said this wasn't blood. This was not blood. This was the juice of the meat. And also remember again, especially if we're talking about a piece of meat which was roasted, we assume that roasting extracts the blood. So Allah Chalamayim said, even though this was red liquid, again assuming that it was not thick, this wasn't blood. This was gravy. This was the juice. Rava had absolutely no problem consuming this loaf.
And he could eat it with milk, or is that?
No. This is meat. This is meat. Let's not get carried away over here. Right? You can eat the loaf of bread. That's as far as we're going to go. Right? So the Gemara says as follows: Amr Nachman Amr Shmuel. So both I said, and that is indeed how the sugya ends. That Allah Chalamayim say again, Rava Paskin, that as long as the liquid is liquidy and not thick, this has more the status of like gravy, where Rava called it the wine of the meat, and therefore is permitted. So the Gemara goes right there. Amar Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel in manichin kli tachas basar ad sheyichle kamara ad mumis shebo. So let's listen to this. Remember again, yesterday we spoke about the beidugi. Right, the beidugi was like the it's like a grease pan. Right, it's the pan you put underneath the meat in order to catch the schmaltz. So over here, Abosai says Rav Nachman name of Shmuel, you cannot go ahead and put the pan underneath the meat until all of the red appearance from the liquid disappears. So everything that has the possibility of being blood has to be gone before you go ahead and you put the pan underneath. So you want to be able to catch the fat, but we don't want you catching any kind of blood. So as I say, how do you know at what point in time so the red liquid is gone and you could put the pan out to be able to catch the schmaltz? So Marzutra Mishvei Rapapa Amar Mishetala Timraso. When the meat itself, when the flesh begins to go ahead and smoke, that's when you know the blood is gone, and whatever drips out subsequently is going to go ahead and be considered to be fat. Maybe the smoke is only going to come from the lower meat, right? The lower part of the flesh, which is in direct contact with the fire, but the upper part still has blood. Less takanta. So Rashi says in reality, the only takana is as follows. Ella, Mishra will say there's only one way to deal with this, which is Mishta Bei Tarti Galali Milcha. So this is actually very interesting. So what you do is you take this pan, you take this beidugi, you put 2 piles of salt in it. It's actually quite interesting. So the Gemara, turn the page, will say, so Mishta Bei Tarti Galali Milcha, put two mounds of salt. Rashi says, Umishafye. Now this is actually very interesting. Look at Rashi, Mishafye, Kima Shofye Lechavero, Kulir Kalomar, Ya'ara Hashuman Alyon V'nachas Mikli, El Kli, Kadesh Lo Yis'arif Hadam Bo. V'ra'isi Ba'alachos Gedolos, the Davka Noket Tregal Ali Kalomar Ma'at Melach, Avamelach Harbe Posek Koach Adam Oseh Kimas. Listen to this. So we'll say, so apparently what they would do is as follows. They would take 2 small piles of salt, place it on the beidugi. So what the Gemara is saying is as follows. Originally what we thought is like this. Don't bring out the beidugi until you know that what? The blood has drained off the animal. How do you know the blood has drained off the animal? When the flesh starts smoking. The Gemara says that's a very imprecise method because the truth is there's a whole animal that's cooking and the whole animal doesn't cook evenly. So you could have parts of the flesh that are smoking, other parts that are not yet fully cooked. So therefore, again, it's hard to know when exactly the blood has drained off. So rather, what the Gemara says, I have a different approach. Use the beidugi, put out the tray. But what should you do? 2 piles of salt. Both of this is incredible. Apparently, so the qualities of salt will be, we know this by the way, the qualities of salt will be, the salt will absorb the blood. Both we know this because one of the ways to drain the blood from meat, is to salt the meat, right? So you can roast it. Roasting, right, extracts the blood, and ultimately salt extracts the blood. So put 2 piles of salt. Go ahead, and what happens, I will say, when stuff drips off the animal, if it's salt, if it's blood, it will be drawn into the salt pile. If it's schmaltz, so apparently again the fat, right, the other liquids apparently, again, do not get drawn into the salt. They float on top. So therefore, what the Gemara suggests is as follows. What you need to do is, number one, so take out the beidugi, put the 2 piles of salt. When the animal finishes cooking, what do? Pour off the liquid from the beidugi very slowly. What ends up happening when you do that? The schmaltz, which is on top, will pour off, and the salt, which remains absorbed, will remain in the beidugi, in the salt piles of the beidugi. Okay, so the Gemara goes weiter. The Gemara is... I'm sorry. So the Gemara is fine. Amar le'Rav Acha Breid Rav Ika l'Rav Ashi. So we'll say, so Rav Acha Breid Rav Ika said to Rav Ashi, Umir Mar Shmuel Hachi. Did Shmuel really say this? Now we'll say, look at Rashi for just a moment. Umir Mar Shmuel Hachi. So remember again, Shmuel just said before something very interesting, which is that halacha l'maisa, you cannot go ahead and put out the beidugi until all red liquid drains from the animal. You cannot have a beidugi there while there's any red liquid, because apparently Shmuel is considering all red liquid to be what? All red liquid to be dam. So the Gemara says, so Shmuel really say this. Shmuel said, Kikar shenechtach ala basar asr la'achla. Shmuel said that halacha l'maisa, if you have a kikar, if you have a loaf of bread, and you cut meat on top of that loaf of bread, then what? Anything, that kikar ultimately again will be asr. And Rashi says, V'amar Shmuel v'hai basar kvar nitzla. Now remember again, that meat was already roasted. Right, that meat was already roasted. Yet Shmuel is going to say that the kikar will be asr. Shiny hasam, here's the difference. The agov duchka disakina palat. Ultimately, again, Shmuel holds will say that case is a little bit different. Why? Because even though, again, we normally assume that what? That halacha l'maisa, when you roast the meat, the blood comes out. And we'll say, remember, again, this is exceptionally important. We've said this a number of times already, which is, blood is only problematic when? Only when it comes out of the meat. Blood that is inside of the meat is not problematic. So why does Shmuel hold that halacha l'maisa, the loaf, is problematic? Because of what we call duchka desakina. The act of taking the knife and pressing down on the piece of meat causes blood that is absorbed. So we'll say, the Gemara is working under the assumption that we know that through tzli, you may not be getting out all of the blood. Does that bother us? No. Why? Because blood absorbed in the meat itself is not halachically problematic. Only blood which comes out. The problem Shmuel has with the case of the loaf is that halacha l'maisa, when you're pressing down on the piece of meat with the knife on top of the loaf, blood comes out. Once blood actively comes out and gets absorbed into the loaf, that's when Shmuel is going to say that the loaf is going to be problematic. Good. I'm Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman says as follows. What's an interesting case? Dagim va'ofos shamalchan ze'im ze'asurin. So this is an interesting case. You're going ahead. Now, just to understand how this works. Under normal circumstances, when you would go ahead and you would salt meat to go ahead and extract the blood. So what type of utensil do you use for salting meat? A perforated utensil. Remember again, you don't want the meat sitting in a pool of its own blood for one simple reason, which is what you accomplish with the salting, you lose out through the reabsorption. So salting is always done in a perforated utensil. So in this case, you have an interesting situation. You have fish and birds, fish and ophos, that you're going ahead, shemalchem zemzeh. You're salting them together. Rashi says, Dagim va'ofos, lav dafka ofos, techoshekin basar, el lefishu kasha mi basar ofos. So we'll say, so again, just so Rashi just points out, this case is not unique to fish and to birds. It could be fish and meat also, right? Fish is the important part over here. Fish and another type of meat, whether it's fowl or whether it's basar. So you have fish and you have birds that you have salted them together. We'll say, what's the halacha? Asurin. Ultimately, again, they are asur. Now we'll say, now what's asur? Rashi points out over here, in this case, the fish is asur. Why is the fish asur? Because as we're going to see, the blood from the ophos, the blood from the fowl, the blood from the chicken, gets absorbed into the fish. So says the Gemara, what's the case? What are you talking about over here? What's the case? If we're talking about a non-perforated pan, afilu ophos v'ophos nami asiri. Say, if this is a non-perforated pan, then the truth is anything you have in there is going to be asr. Why I will say? Because if it's not perforated, then what's happening over here? The item is sitting in a pool of its own blood. which I will say again is problematic because halacha lamaisa, what it is polate, what it expels, it is reabsorbing. So forget about fish and fowl, meat and fish, doesn't make a difference. Halacha lamaisa, any item, ofos v'ofos, you have chicken sitting in a pot with its own blood, ultimately it's going to be aser. Ibekli minukov, and if the utensil is perforated, then afilu dagim v'ofos nami shari. We'll say if the utensil is perforated, then what? Then halacha lamaisa, again, even in the case of the birds and the fish, it should be fine. Why? Why I say? Because the blood is running off. So the Gemara says, so what's the case? The olam b'kli minukov. In reality, we're talking about a perforated utensil. So what's the problem? V'dogim mishum derafu karmaihu. Kadmi upalti. So listen to this, I'm going to literally translate it, and then we'll understand it. So when it comes to fish, so their skin is soft, and therefore what? Kadmi upalti. They finish emitting their blood first. Va'ofos kamiti. Birds are a bit tougher. Basar denai chidogim pliti ofos. So once ultimately again the fish have finished emitting their blood, so the chicken, the fowl is still emitting its blood. V'hadar bali minei, and ultimately again the fish absorb from the fowl. We'll say, what does that mean? Take a look at Rashi. Rashi says over here, I'm in the wide lines of Rashi, 3 lines down. The olam b'kli minukov v'hainu taima dedagim asurim. So we'll say in reality we're dealing with a perforated utensil. So if that's the case, why are the fish also? Watch this. Mishum dedogim rafu karmayu krum shalahem rach. The fish have a softer skin. The kadni upalti memarin liftlot tsir shalahem. They quickly emit their brine or their blood, right? Va'ofos kamiti somsin kolomar in memarin liflot ukvar nachu adogim liflot va'dayin ofos poltin. So we'll say, what's happening? Interesting dynamic. Apparently, fish and fowl do not emit their blood at the same pace as a result of just their different physiological qualities. Fish, apparently, because of their softer skin, emit their blood faster, finish faster. Chicken, fowl, on the other hand, because it has tougher flesh, ultimately takes more time to emit the blood. So we'll say, so what do you have over here? If you have them sitting in the same utensil, then what occurs? By the time the fish finishes emitting its blood, what's happened? The fowl is still emitting its blood. And what occurs? Hilchach bali dogim. Therefore, ultimately, again, I will say, what occurs? What occurs is the fish, because, so I will say, remember, again, we're working with a general principle, which is, as long as you are occupied with what? With emitting blood, you're not what? You're not absorbing. So therefore, again, as long as the fish is emitting, it's not absorbing. The problem is the fish finishes before the chicken, right? And therefore, again, when the chicken is still emitting, still expelling, the fish is absorbing. And therefore, again, Rashi points out about basar ubasar kama shezeshah liflot kach. So that's why, again, you don't run into this situation with 2 like items, because the assumption is that with 2 like items, they're both busy what? They're both busy emitting and therefore not absorbing. The problem you have over here is with fish and fowl. The fowl finish, right? The fish finish. The fowl has not, and while the fowl is still emitting, the fish begins to absorb. Therefore, halacha l'maaseh, even in a perforated pot, right? Because ultimately, again, the chicken is still emitting. Halacha l'maaseh, the fish will become aser. Incredible. So the Gemara goes weiter. Rav Mari bar Rachel imlach le basar shchuta bahadi basar treifra. So listen to this interesting case. So Rav Mari bar Rachel was once salting kosher meat together with treifa meat. Fascinating, no? Right? He was going, and Rashi says over here, Imlach le basar shchuta bahadi basar nevela ubekli minukov kimishpat amalchim basar. So we'll say, so remember again, they're doing this properly in a perforated pot, so the blood is running off. The kami boile, so listen to how fascinating this is. Mi arminan kiechi degabe dam lo chayshina ledilma palat alyon ubula takton. Dermina kalman shetruzim beplita eine bolin ushtei mecham. So let's listen to this. Based on what we said about, say, what should be the halacha if you're going ahead and you are salting treifa meat together with shechta meat? It almost sounds like what should be the halacha about, say, what should be the halacha? It's mutter, right? I'm saying it sounds sacrilegious to say it, but it almost sounds like it could work. Why? Because if we assume that when you have 2 like items, they're on the same, what we'll call plita schedule, right? They're on the same emissions schedule. Therefore, again, if you have this non-kosher piece of meat and this kosher piece of meat, both being salted, now obviously, again, it has to be perforated, in the same perforated pot, they're both emitting their blood. Because they're both emitting, therefore, neither is absorbing, and therefore the kosher meat should remain unimpacted by the presence of the treifa meat. Incredible. So let's listen to this. So also the kamei de Rava, say came before Rava. Rava said to him, Hatmeim le'asar. So we'll say here Rava is quoting from the pasuk that says, Eila hatmeim b'chem b'chol sheretz. These are the items that are tamei to you in any creepy, crawly thing, sheretz. Kolonogia b'hem b'mosam yitma ad ha'erev. So Rava said, hatmeim comes to include a variety of things. Le'asar, tziran, v'rotvan, v'kipa shelen. I will say it comes to include anything that is a derivative of a tamei item, including its tzir, its juices, its gravy, the kippah. Rashi says over here, lesser tzir v'rotvan, pirma basar v'tavlin hanikva b'shuli hakadera, v'chevan the tziran asar, mitzar habasra hashachot machmas tzir hatreifa, shonoach livla min adam. Wow, Rabbi say, watch this. This is so exciting. Whoever thought that these sugis could come alive like this, that blood would be so exciting, absorption would be so exciting. So listen to this. So apparently it turns out up until now we only thought that we were dealing with blood. It's not true. When you're draining blood, other stuff comes out of the animal as well. Other stuff comes out of the meat. So there's dam, but there's also what's called tzir. We'll say, so tzir is often translated as brine, but really for our purposes it's juice. There are just juices that come out. Those juices are more easily absorbed by another item than blood. So therefore, again, what Rava suggested was as follows. Rav Mari bar Rocha, when you're going ahead and you're salting your non-kosher piece of meat together with the treifa piece of meat, it's true, the kosher piece of meat will not absorb of the dam of the treifa. It will not absorb the blood, but it will absorb what? The tzir. It does absorb the juices, and those juices apparently, as Rashi points out, are much more easily absorbed than the blood itself. Therefore, again, the piece of meat will be aser. So the Gemara says, top of Kufir Gemara Bosai, V'lema lon, V'lema le mid Shmuel. So why don't you say, but it should be problematic based on Shmuel. What is Shmuel? Say, Damer Shmuel, Maliach Hariu Kroseach, the Kavash Harik Mavush. Rabbi said, there's another problem. So again, so first of all, so Rabbi says you have the tzir issue. There's another problem, we'll say, which is the same with the Shmuel. What does Shmuel hold? Maliach hariu k'roseach, which I will say means what? The process salting, right? When you salt things heavily, which you do when you have to extract blood, when you salt things heavily, that has, I will say, the qualities of what? Of roasting items together. So therefore, again, if you're salting a piece of non-kosher meat with a piece of kosher meat, that's the equivalent of what I will say, that's of cooking them together. If that's the case, it should certainly be aser. So the Gemara says, Eid mi the Shmuel. Hava amina, hani mili, daman. So we'll say, if it was based on Shmuel, I would say still, we only have an issue of blood. Aval tziran v'rotban lo. But I will say, see, here's the problem. According to Shmuel, you're right. Maliach hu kroseach. But I will say, I have the antidote to that. What's my antidote to maliach hari kroseach? I will say, why isn't that a problem here? Why not? Because remember, they're both simultaneously what? Emitting. So even if you hold Maliach Harihu Karoseach, at the end of the day, that's still not so problematic. Why not? Because Halocha L'Meisa Yinabo say I have the issue that they're both simultaneously emitting. Aval Tziron V'rot Ban Lo. But I will say ultimately again, I would have thought Maliach Karoseach is only a problem by dam, but it's not a problem ultimately again by the tzir or by the rotav, and the dam's not going to be problematic. Why? Because halacha l'maisa, they're both simultaneously emitting. Kamash Rabo say that even if you feel you could neutralize the maliach kiroseach issue over here, because they're both emitting, there's still going to be a problem ultimately of the tzir, of the rotav, and therefore again, halacha l'maisa, the act of salting the basar shchota together with the basar treifa, although you might not run into a dam issue, ultimately again you will run into a tzir, to a meat juice issue, which will render the kosher meat unkosher. Okay, so we'll stop over here for today. Let's say just a reminder, tomorrow Tanis Esther, as well as Thursday, Chullin, we will Emeretz Hashem be starting at 5:45 a.m. with the daf. Chovas HaTalmidim will Emeretz Hashem resume on Friday at 5:45.